Have you ever felt like the whole world turned against you for no reason at all? Like you're being whispered about, lied to, or even attacked? And worst of all, it's coming from people you once trusted? This isn't just gossip. It's a calculated, organized smear campaign, orchestrated by a narcissist and carried out by their loyal flying monkeys. Flying monkeys are the people manipulated into thinking you're the problem. They'll defend the narcissist, attack your reputation, and shame you without ever knowing the full truth. They're emotional pawns, driven by guilt, fear, or blind loyalty. But today, that ends. In this video, I'll show you exactly how these flying monkeys operate, why they fall under the narcissist's spell, and, most importantly, how to shut them down without losing your peace. If you've been hurt by narcissistic abuse, this video is your roadmap to clarity and control. Stick around till the end, because every single minute is a tool you can use to protect your mind, your name, and your future. And if this speaks to you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because healing doesn't have to be a lonely journey. To know how to protect yourself from a narcissist smear campaign, you first need to understand their most dangerous weapon, the flying monkeys. The term, inspired by the movie The Wizard of Oz, refers to people who are manipulated into attacking the narcissist's target, often you on their behalf. But not all flying monkeys are the same. Recognizing each type is the first step to reclaiming your power. Let's start with the first group, the unintentional flying monkeys. These individuals don't necessarily mean harm, they're simply misinformed. Often they believe the narcissist's twisted narrative because it's the only version they've heard. These people could be mutual friends, co-workers, or even family members. They hear a story full of tears, victimhood, and carefully selected half-truths, and genuinely think they're doing the right thing by offering support, without realizing they're actually enabling abuse. Next, we have the opportunistic flying monkeys, those who know something is off but choose to side with the narcissist anyway. Why? Because they fear conflict, want to preserve their social standing, or simply don't want to be the next target. It's herd mentality. People will often prioritize comfort and safety over truth. Standing with a narcissist, especially if they're charismatic or influential, feels like the safer option, even if deep down they sense you're being treated unfairly. Finally, the most dangerous group, the willing accomplices. These flying monkeys don't need manipulation. They're already invested. Whether driven by jealousy, resentment, or the thrill of taking you down, they actively help the narcissist tear you apart. They spread lies, post snide comments, and escalate conflicts, all while pretending to be concerned. They enjoy the damage they're causing and they know what they're doing. So, what makes someone fall into these roles? First, it's herd mentality. In toxic environments, people are more afraid of isolation than of being wrong. When a narcissist appears powerful or persuasive, others align with them just to avoid becoming the next outcast. Second, there's emotional manipulation. Narcissists are masters of gaslighting, causing others to doubt their own perception, and guilt-tripping, making people feel like they're bad if they don't offer help. The narcissist paints themselves as fragile, misunderstood, or broken. Suddenly, helping them feels like a moral obligation. And third, their most dangerous weapon is their ability to tell a story. They don't need to scream or threaten, they play the victim with precision. They speak in soft tones, use emotional language, and twist facts just enough to sound believable. They move people with a narrative, not with logic. Ultimately, not every flying monkey is malicious, but none of them are safe. Understanding who you're dealing with helps you respond intelligently, whether that means cutting contact, setting boundaries, or simply walking away. Because the truth is, you don't need to be believed by people who've already chosen not to see you clearly. Coming up next, I'll show you exactly how to silence the flying monkeys without yelling, without begging, and without losing your peace. Stay with this video because every minute forward holds the keys to your protection and your healing. Understanding who the flying monkeys are and why they willingly or blindly become tools of the narcissist is the first step toward realizing you are not crazy, weak, or alone, but simply identifying the problem isn't enough. You also need to know what to do when you've become the target of a calculated smear campaign. You need strategy, not war. You need self-possession, not pointless resistance. And most of all, you need a silence that speaks louder than words. Now, we move into the most crucial part of your healing: how to silence the flying monkeys. Without shouting, without begging, and without compromising your self-worth. Strategy 1. Stop explaining yourself to people who've already chosen not to understand you. In every narcissistic smear campaign, one of the first emotional reactions you'll experience is the deep, aching desire to be understood. You want to clear your name. You want someone, anyone, to hear your side. That's human, that's natural. After all, who doesn't want to be seen accurately, fairly, and truthfully? But in the narcissist's game, truth is irrelevant, and justice is never the goal. So, here's one of the hardest truths you'll ever accept on your healing journey. You do not owe your truth to people who've already chosen to believe the one who hurt you. These people are not lacking information. They're lacking courage. The courage to confront the uncomfortable, to challenge someone they once admired, or to admit they might have been wrong. When someone truly wants to understand you, they will approach with respect, curiosity, and a willingness to hear both sides. They will say things like, "I heard some things, but I'd really like to hear it from you. This doesn't sit right with me. Can we talk?" Those people are rare, but they're worth keeping. The rest? The ones who demand that you defend yourself, who come to verify the rumors, or worse, who speak for the narcissist. They've already made their choice, and they do not deserve your truth. Why, explaining yourself feeds their power. When you try to explain yourself to the wrong people, you give them power. You place them in the seat of judgment and put yourself on trial. And just like that, you're no longer the one harmed, you become the problem. Here's what's even more painful. Flying monkeys rarely care about what really happened. What they care about is maintaining their loyalty to someone they admire, protecting their social standing, avoiding the guilt that would come with admitting they were wrong. In other words, your truth threatens their comfort, so they reject it, even if it's obvious. What happens when you keep explaining every time you try to clarify? They twist your words. Every emotional outburst, every desperate attempt to prove you're telling the truth becomes another example of why you're unstable or dramatic. You think you're protecting yourself, but to them, you're acting exactly how the narcissist said you would. And in a world that doesn't want to hear you, truth becomes meaningless when the listener is biased. So, what can you do instead? Stop. Stop explaining, stop offering truth to those who've weaponized it. Instead, live with integrity. Let your actions speak louder than the lies. Step back. Let them live with the version of you they chose to believe. Let time do its job. Truth doesn't have to scream to be real. It just has to be consistent. Don't rush to fix your image. Don't scramble to be understood. Because here's the thing. The people who demand an explanation from you were never really listening. From my heart to yours, there is nothing more exhausting than constantly defending yourself to people who don't want to see you clearly. Real freedom begins when you stop seeking validation from places that never offered real safety. You don't need the crowd. You need you steady, silent, grounded in your worth. Your silence is not weakness, it is strategy. It is the choice of someone who has outgrown the narcissist's game and has chosen peace over performance. Strategy 2. Set clear emotional and informational boundaries. The next strategy to silence the flying monkeys doesn't lie in arguments, confrontations, or dramatic speeches. It lies in one crucial skill: the ability to set boundaries. Boundaries aren't just what you say, they are what you live by every single day. And in this invisible war with those manipulated by the narcissist, Setting emotional and informational boundaries is not only how you protect yourself, it's how you take back control of your life, quietly and powerfully. First, you need to understand this. Your personal information, your emotions, your life changes, your everyday reality is golden ammunition to flying monkeys. Every small detail you reveal, whether it's your emotional state, a new relationship, or a simple update about your life, can be twisted, dramatized, and broadcasted to serve the narcissist's narrative. In their eyes, you're not a full human being with real complexity, you're a character in the narcissist's script, and they only need a few lines from your real life to make the role more convincing. That's why you must become the gatekeeper of your own story, not because you have something to hide, but because you understand. Not everyone deserves access to you. Emotional boundaries begin internally. They start with refusing to be pulled into pointless conversations, subtle provocations, or passive-aggressive glances that you know come from a toxic place. You don't need to respond to everything people say about you. Every reaction you give sends a message. You still have power over my emotional state, and that is exactly what both the narcissist and the flying monkeys crave: emotional control. But when you can remain grounded, silent, and still in the face of manipulation, you begin to create a zone of safety that no one can invade without your consent. Next comes informational boundaries, the kind that must be clear, intentional, and non-negotiable. On social media, this might mean switching to private accounts, limiting who can see your stories, and curating your friend list with care. In real life, it means thinking twice before sharing personal updates, even with people you once considered close or safe. One of the hardest but most liberating truths in healing is this: not everyone wants what's best for you, and not everyone deserves to know what's going on in your life. Watch more than you speak. Observe more than you disclose, and always remember, people who truly care will never pressure you to overshare. When you start living with strong boundaries, you'll notice something powerful. The people who used to be loud about you start falling silent, not because they've changed, but because you've removed their supply. You've taken away their access, their material, and their ability to weaponize your life. You've robbed them of the chaos they feed on by doing the one thing they can't stand: being calm, private, and in control. They might try to provoke you. They might try to get your attention or stir up conflict just to get a reaction. But you don't need to respond. Your stability is their confusion. Your peace is their powerlessness. No one can turn your life into a stage if you stop showing up to perform. No one can manipulate you if you stop feeding them data. No one can hurt you when you draw a clear line between you and them. Boundaries don't make you cold or distant, they make you whole, present, and untouchable. That's the kind of silence that speaks volumes. That's the kind of silence that stops flying monkeys in their tracks. And that's the kind of silence that leaves the narcissist powerless. You've already won. Not with noise, but with a stillness that no one can touch. Strategy 3. Grey rock dog. Become boring to protect yourself. The next strategy, and perhaps one of the most effective when dealing with narcissists and their flying monkeys, is the grey rock technique. The idea is simple, yet incredibly powerful. When you are no longer interesting, they lose interest in harming you. Imagine a grey stone among thousands of others. Dull, emotionless, neutral. No one pays attention to it, no one wants to pick it up. That is exactly what you must become when facing people who thrive on dragging you into their emotional chaos. Narcissists and flying monkeys feed on your energy. They don't necessarily need you to be wrong, they just need you to react. A glare of anger, a sad status update, a defensive message, all of these are fuel for their fire. Every emotional display gives them material to reinforce the narrative they want others to believe. The more emotionally you react, the more powerful they feel. The grey rock technique is not about pretending. It is a high-level emotional skill. It requires you to practice responding as little as possible, or not at all, to their provocations. When they talk about you behind your back, stay silent. When they send a message meant to provoke, don't reply. When they mock, provoke, or lie, don't explain. Don't argue. Don't give them any visible reaction. You become like a stone wall, calm, steady, impenetrable. And here's the magic. They start to get bored. Because the truth is, narcissists and their enablers are not really looking for truth. They're looking for drama. If you stop being a source of emotional chaos, you stop being the main character in their toxic narrative. They'll eventually redirect their focus elsewhere, not because they've suddenly seen the light, but because you've become emotionally unavailable and therefore useless. And you don't need to beat them in a public fight. You win by no longer playing the game. That said, using the grey rock method isn't easy, especially if you still care, still hurt, or still hope things might change. Silence can feel uncomfortable at first. It can make you feel cold, disconnected, or like you're losing touch with your humanity. But remember this, you're not silent because you lack emotion. You're silent because you're protecting those emotions from being exploited. You're not disengaging because you're weak. You're disengaging because you've grown too strong to need to prove anything. And that strength is exactly what makes you untouchable. Grey rock doesn't mean you become robotic or numb. Outside the toxic circle, you are still free to live fully, to laugh, to cry, to love, and to express yourself with those who are safe. You just learn to be selective with who gets access to your authentic self, and you cut off the supply to anyone who seeks to twist, harm, or drain you. Remember this. You don't need to be interesting to people who are only interested in destroying you through curiosity. You just need to be that grey rock, quiet, unrewarding, drama-free. And in that stillness, you're saying something powerful. I am no longer a character in your story. I am writing my own. And in this new chapter, you have no role. Strategy 4. Respond with facts, not emotion. In some situations, you can't completely disappear or go silent. There are times when you still have to show up at work, within family dynamics, or in relationships where contact is unavoidable. In these moments, silence alone won't be enough. What you need is a way to respond that's intelligent, composed, and untouchable. This is where the strategy comes in. Respond with facts, not emotion. First, understand this. When you respond emotionally, you put yourself at a disadvantage. Manipulators, especially narcissists, are experts at pressing your deepest emotional triggers just to watch you lose control. A passive-aggressive comment, a calculated rumor, a carefully timed insult. These are emotional traps, and once you fall into them, you'll react exactly how they hoped. Angry, hurt, defensive, saying things you might regret. And then they'll turn around and say, "See, I told you they were unstable." Just like that, all your efforts to protect yourself get twisted into proof of their lies. That's why you must learn to respond in a cool, clear, and neutral way. Not because you're cold, but because you have a purpose. To protect yourself from being misrepresented. When you speak less and only say what's verifiable, they're left with nothing to spin. Take this example. If a co-worker, a flying monkey, tries to corner you with a passive-aggressive question in front of others, instead of lashing out or over-explaining, you might simply say, "I don't engage in speculation," or, "If you have concerns, feel free to send me an email." The less emotion you show, the harder it is for them to twist your words. Every interaction becomes professional, not personal. If you're dealing with pressure from flying monkeys within a family setting, set boundaries by keeping your responses factual and emotion-free. "I hear you. My stance remains the same." And stop there. Don't debate, don't explain. The more you explain, the more they have to manipulate. Also, be prepared to quietly gather evidence when needed. Messages, emails, journals, screenshots. These tools can help you protect yourself when the time is right. But here's the key. Don't wave your evidence around in anger. Don't use it to retaliate. Keep it until it truly matters. when you're in a safe space, with witnesses or within a legal context. And most importantly, don't fight to win the approval of people who've already chosen to turn their backs on you. Responding with facts isn't about convincing them, it's about protecting your clarity and your integrity, regardless of whether they acknowledge it. Emotion may feel satisfying in the moment, but only truth and consistency can sustain you in the long run. So every time you feel the urge to react, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is what I'm about to say based on fact, or is my emotion leading me? If you're unsure, say nothing. Silence in those moments is the smartest form of self-defense. But if you must speak, do so like someone who knows their worth. Be brief, be clear, don't ramble, don't justify. Because in the end, you don't have to shout to defend the truth. You just have to live in alignment with it and let others see for themselves. Nothing speaks louder than someone who refuses to flinch in the face of gossip. Strategy 5. Turn your silence into power. In the world of narcissists and the flying monkeys, they manipulate. Everything you say can and likely will be twisted, distorted, or used against you. This is not communication, it's weaponization. So how do you protect yourself from becoming further material for their narratives? The answer might surprise you. With silence, when understood and applied properly, silence isn't surrender, it's power. It is the expression of immense inner control. It's the conscious act of disengaging, refusing to react, and stepping out of the noise where you're constantly placed on the defensive. To someone who hasn't experienced psychological abuse, silence may seem like avoidance or weakness. But to survivors of narcissistic manipulation, silence is survival. Silence breaks the chain reaction. When you don't respond, the manipulator loses their grip. The flying monkeys have nothing to report, no words of yours to quote, no expressions to analyze. And those who feed on drama and emotional chaos, they start to find you boring. But that boredom isn't a flaw. It's a form of emotional untouchability that you are building through each conscious choice to stay quiet. Silence is also how you reclaim choice. Instead of reacting to the script the narcissist has written for you, you take back your time, your energy, your awareness. You observe instead of explain. You wait instead of react. And in that stillness, you begin to see more clearly who truly wants to be in your life and who was only there for the storyline. You develop patience, you build emotional resilience, and gradually you regain mastery over the one thing they were trying so hard to steal, your sense of self. But make no mistake, this silence we speak of is not suppression or forced endurance. It's not driven by fear or defeat. It is a conscious, empowered decision. It's the moment you see the whole game and realize that not playing is the most powerful move of all. It's when you know that your worth doesn't hinge on winning a debate, but on not losing yourself. Remember, you don't need to explain yourself for someone to believe you. Those who truly trust you won't demand proof. And those who've already sided with the manipulator will always find reasons to doubt no matter what you say. So why allow your voice to pass through ears that don't listen with honesty? In these moments, your silence becomes your declaration. A declaration that you're no longer part of their performance, that you've stopped living to convince others you're good, and that you've moved further and more peacefully than they ever imagined. This kind of silence, if held long enough, transforms into the loudest voice, a voice that needs no microphone, no stage, no applause. It just needs you, steadfast, true, and grounded beyond the reach of manipulation. So let your silence become your ultimate weapon, the thing the narcissist can't handle, the flying monkeys can't exploit, and the toxic environment can no longer penetrate. If you've made it this far, I know one thing for sure. You're tired of living in fear. You're done being controlled by lies, invisible attacks, and the exhausting feeling that you have to explain yourself just to survive. You've started to see things for what they are, and that is an act of courage. A narcissist survives by making others doubt themselves. They twist the truth, cast you as the villain, and create a false sense of victimhood that pulls others in. And flying monkeys, whether unknowing, manipulated, or intentionally harmful, are key players in this psychological warfare where you have been the target. But not anymore. Today you are no longer the hunted. You are becoming the author of your own healing. We've walked together through every strategy. You've learned to stop explaining yourself to people who never intended to understand you. You've learned how to set emotional and informational boundaries, like an inner suit of armor protecting you from distortion and control. You've practiced grey rock, becoming uninteresting to those addicted to drama, so you can reclaim your inner stability. You've refined the skill of responding with facts instead of emotion, turning your words into a shield rather than a weakness. And most importantly, you've discovered the power of intentional silence, a silence not born from fear, but from freedom. These are not just techniques, they are expressions of self-respect. When you choose not to argue, not to explain, and not to be pulled into chaos, you are silently saying, "I know who I am. I don't need you to believe me for it to be true." So now you may be wondering, what comes next? How do I live after all this destruction? The answer is simple, but profound. You live honestly, deeply, authentically, free from the need for external validation. When you walk away from narcissistic relationships, you're not just losing a person, you're letting go of an entire system that forced you to become someone more lovable, more agreeable, less threatening. Anything but your real self. And what you gain in return is something priceless, the permission to be you, fully, unapologetically, and without performance. I know there will still be days when you feel alone, hollow, or lost, but that doesn't mean you're broken. It means you are healing, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. You are learning how to hold yourself again, gently, patiently, and with real compassion. And slowly you will begin to rebuild healthy relationships rooted in mutual respect, an emotionally safe environment, a version of yourself that no longer needs to act right in order to be loved. You are not alone. I know that sometimes the most painful part of this journey is not being believed, not being understood when you cut ties with someone others still admire, not being seen for the pain you've endured. But here, within this community, you are believed, you are understood. You don't have to over-explain, because we already know what it feels like. Please feel free to share your story in the comments, not just to release your pain, but to let someone else know they're not alone either. Every story you share is a small light, and that light could be the exact thing that helps someone find their way out. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so we can keep walking this healing path together. Because no one should have to heal alone. And the more of us there are, the stronger we become. And here is the last thing I want to leave you with. You don't have to shout to protect yourself. You don't have to win people back who already chose to walk away. You don't have to prove you are worthy. You just have to live in truth and let the truth take care of the rest. Because peace doesn't come from being understood by everyone. Peace comes from understanding yourself and never letting someone else's distortion define you again. If you're ready to take the next step, my upcoming video will guide you through the process of rebuilding your self-worth after narcissistic abuse. Don't miss it. I'm Stoic Pathways, and I believe with all my heart you can rise again, brighter than ever.